for a customer approaching a vendor, it's as simple as presenting cash, um, and the vendor will ask, "Would you like a Lightning or on-chain um, voucher?" Um, Typically, and it's in small amounts. Especially for a newcomer, first time, they'll say, "Oh, I want $5 of Bitcoin." You'll give them a Lightning voucher, um, and on the voucher, it gives the instructions of exactly what wallets to download. It gives you a QR code, and it's putting together these skills that everyone has. The majority of people are going to be able to read that, download an app, and scan a QR code, and it's maybe a 2-minute process from approach to person, walking away, and compare that to what a lot of Bitcoiners have experienced over the years in buying, the legacy system. It cuts it from maybe like a week from getting ID'd, sending a selfie, and money on, money off. It takes that week timeline down to a couple minutes. So very reproducible.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Changing the Tide. I'm your host, John Crabtree. Today I'm with Doug of BitRamp. BitRamp sells Azteco Bitcoin vouchers, and it's easy to get onboarded as a business or individual to a BitRamp terminal, or simply to your Azteco account. You top it up with cash, and then you have a commission that you're paid, and you're able to sell Bitcoin vouchers. Now that's an important distinction, which Doug will clarify even more so. You're not actually selling Bitcoin, you're selling Bitcoin vouchers. And so it's just like selling gift cards. For instance, at a store, you're selling the gift card for that network. And so same thing, selling Bitcoin vouchers to access the Bitcoin network. Azteco takes care of all of the back end so that when a person redeems those vouchers, they receive Bitcoin. But making it as easy as possible, as easy as topping up a mobile phone to get Bitcoin. And that's an incredible vision. It's a vision that is going to help onboard not only individuals, but businesses, and truly create a circular economy. And more so than that, it's ethical Bitcoin as well. So someone did not have to give over important personal identifiable information in order to receive that voucher, and neither do businesses have to give up any more information than they actually need to get their account set up. I'm excited to dive in more. Here's Doug. Doug, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, John. Thanks for having me on.
I am super excited. I am a BitRamp user myself, or vendor, I should say. Actually, both. We were just talking about that offline. So excited to have you talk about it today.
Yeah, awesome. No, I'm pumped to share.
All right, let's take a look at Amboss here and take a look at some of the info on nodes and liquidity in the Lightning Network. So we have, in the public Lightning Network, at least 16,666 public nodes. There are about 84,389 open channels on the public Lightning Network. Based on a couple sessions ago with Roy from Breeze, we know that there's actually probably close to that many channels on the and private Lightning Network. So it is bigger than it looks publicly, which is a cool thing. And we're going to talk a little bit about privacy in Bitcoin with BitRamp, with Doug here at BitRamp too. But capacity, it's growing. Past couple weeks ago, 4,500 Bitcoin active in the Lightning Network. We're now at 4,635. And we've got some really great fees considering where we were a couple of even months ago, even a few weeks ago. So if you're ready to open a Lightning channel or just do a Bitcoin transaction on chain, now is a really great time to do that, no matter what urgency you have. And then as far as Bitcoin on chain, we've got 14,723 reachable or public Bitcoin nodes. And interestingly enough, we're hovering in that like 21 to 24 range and have been for a couple weeks here. The block height is 750,152. Mono Knot just yesterday celebrated the 750,000th block that was going with his awesome artistic block explorer. So, in any case, Doug, let's get back to talking about BitRamp. What is it?
Yeah. What is BitRamp? BitRamp is just making access for small businesses and meetups and individuals, making it much easier for them to um, sell Bitcoin vouchers via the Azteco system. So, you know, relatively new in the space, but yeah, BitRamp is just on a mission to just proliferate these on ramps that make Bitcoin buying as easy as possible.
And so that's where the BitRamp comes in. You're really providing on ramps for selling Bitcoin
Yeah,
vouchers.
yeah.
So Doug, there's
Exactly. I was, in coming up with that name, it was really just trying to keep it as simple as possible. Bitcoin on ramps. That's what that's what we're about. So
I love it. And so Doug, there's a lot of different ways that you could offer Bitcoin and be a um, be a person who proliferates Bitcoin on ramps. Why this route? Why the terminal Bitcoin vouchers? What does that offer both the vendor and the consumer of the Bitcoin?
well, I think there's it's a couple parts. I think on one hand, we have the norm of buying Bitcoin, which is exchanges. And I think anyone who's gone down the rabbit hole, starts to learn about Bitcoin, realize kind of what they've done, even just going through the process of purchasing on an exchange, you begin to question what, especially as all these data breaches take place, and you're sacrificing your identity when you're doing these things. People just wonder, does it have to be this hard? Does it really have to be this difficult? Do I have to sacrifice so much? And is that really what Bitcoin is about? And Bitcoin is, and it's what we interact with and what we need to do with it. But in terms of having to have access to Bitcoin, having to go through that legacy system to do it just wasn't really it isn't something that really lines up, I think, with the whole Bitcoin ethos. So I think there's on that hand, and that's ultimately what led me personally to Azteco, is making that buying process as simple as topping up a mobile phone. So you have that side of it as well, but then looking forward, what is going to make it easy for the next billion people to onboard? And again, it's the legacy system, high friction. It puts a fence around who can get in and who can get out, and so it's pretty restrictive as far as who can participate. And so again, this route through vouchers is the way that it truly is Bitcoin for everyone. Bitcoin made easy. It's just as frictionless as it gets when it comes to buying Bitcoin. So that's what led me to Azteco, and that's what led BitRamp to being created, is just wanting to get as many of those onboards out there.
Awesome. So I am a BitRamp vendor myself, or at least my company is. Explain the process so that if someone is not familiar with, say, Azteco, which they probably should be if they're a Bitcoiner, but if they're not familiar with Azteco or with BitRamp, how easy is it? What do you do? And when someone comes to you when you're set up and says, "I want Bitcoin," how does it work?
Yeah, it's very simple, and it's been great over this time to engage with a lot of Bitcoiners who've been in the space for a long time and maybe had some misperceptions, or maybe had a snapshot of what Azteco and Bitcoin vouchers were, a couple years ago, and how that's evolved. So yeah, it's for a customer approaching a vendor. It's as simple as presenting cash, and the vendor will ask, "Would you like a Lightning or on-chain voucher?" Typically, and it's in small amounts. Especially for a newcomer, first time, they'll say, "Oh, I want $5 of Bitcoin." You'll give them a Lightning voucher, and on the voucher, it gives the instructions of exactly what wallets to download. It gives you a QR code, and it's putting together these skills that everyone has. The majority of people are going to be able to read that, download an app, and scan a QR code, and it's maybe a 2-minute process from approach to person, walking away. And compare that to what a lot of Bitcoiners have experienced over the years in buying, the legacy system. It cuts it from maybe like a week from getting ID'd, sending a
Yeah.
selfie, and money on, money off. It takes that week timeline down to a couple minutes. So very reproducible.
Yeah, and what are some of the dangers then of when you think through the KYC process, which is send the selfie, send a copy of your driver's license?
Mhm.
What are some of those for those who aren't aware?
Yeah, I think anytime you're trusting your personal identifiers with a centralized source, there's a high risk, a risk that is increasingly being exposed. I think you, the majority of Americans, the majority of people within email address have had it compromised over the last 10 years. If whether it be through LinkedIn, or there's any number of retailers online. We've just been we've been primed to be used to setting up all the accounts that we need, trusting people with that info, and then that info gets bought or sold, or you know hacked. And so anytime you're setting up, especially a bank account, that's the most violating of experiences, because you're giving over, name, date, or birthday. You're giving over, yeah, the selfie, the ID, the home address, and everything is there for now. This
Social security number.
Yes, exactly. So I mean, it's a one-stop shop, and it's a honeypot for anyone who you know, wants to do maybe things you don't want to with that info. And so that's why, how much do you trust that exchange to protect your info, and is it worth offering that up? What's the risk, the cost benefit there, to accessing Bitcoin, when Bitcoin itself doesn't require that, So I think that's something that the masses are trained to believe, is that no, this is the proper way. This is how we have to do it, because this is how it's always been done. So this is how I'll always do it, and I just have to give up my info every time I want to buy Bitcoin. And yeah, it's a tremendous risk and danger as we kind of leave this digital footprint, of what we've done, and just offering that info up for bad actors.
One of the questions I had then to follow up from that is because you just said, it's just the way it's always been done as an exchange. This is how you get Bitcoin. What is it about BitRamp and Azteco that makes it different? Where, for me, for instance, I gave you my company name. I didn't even have to give you my full address, and then send you some money to get my terminal and load up the account, right? So that I have vouchers to distribute. But like that was it. So are there kind of rules in the system that allow you to be able to do that, compared to, let's say, setting up an online exchange?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are, it's collecting the information that we absolutely need in order to get you the ability to sell. And then as for the customer, there's zero account set up at all, so they're not providing any sort of identifier when they're actually going to purchase that voucher. So it's really taking more of a minimalist you know, approach from, the legacy system, which is like, well, how much information can we get versus how much do we really need, you know? Um, so it's just a totally different approach.
It seems like permissionless is the operative word here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what it is, And I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. I'll say it every day probably, but it really is Bitcoin for everyone, and so it reduces that barrier, that tremendous friction that so many people, and I mean, this isn't just third world countries. I mean, in area, parts of the U.S. are turning into third world countries. So you have people all over the world in our in every city in the U.S. included that needs access to this supposed freedom money, right? And so it's a tremendous disservice when those existing legacy fences are put up around something that, yeah, like I said, doesn't require it at all.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, it's. I was driving yesterday through parts of Chicago and Gary, Indiana, that used to be thriving metropolises, really, and they're now, like you mentioned, I mean, we're close to third world, uh, developing nations style living conditions. And we were talking in the car, my family and I, about like how did it become this way? And it's like, well, that's a very complex question.
How much time do you
But
have? Yeah.
yeah, how much time do you have? But at the same time, there is an element to those areas were looked at after certain people moved in and certain policies were set in place that denied access to the best loans, which then economic opportunities became more expensive, and then businesses didn't want to move there because the business conditions weren't viable, and so it did in a lot of ways come down to monetary policy,
Hmm.
and legislative policy at the same time. But uh, that is the beauty of Bitcoin and Bitcoin for those specific areas, like you mentioned in the U.S., where man, how great would it be to be able to have freedom money that, in long term number go up. The number does go up, and you have a certain level of privacy where someone can't look at your personal information and say, yeah, you don't get this, you don't get access to this because you don't have the assets or you don't have whatever reason they want to come up with.
Right. Yeah,
So
and it turns into every other thing that Bitcoin is really made to replace. Any sort of centralized source of money is, and I think it's in the Bitcoin standard, but any sort of centralized source that's of the funds, obviously people are going to gravitate towards that. The bad actors are going to weaponize that, and they're going to put in place the policies and the things that load their bags. And we're seeing that play out on macro, micro, like everybody's doing it, and it shouldn't be the opportunity that people have to protect their monetary value. There's no reason that it needs to be walled off. And so that's ultimately what this the Azteco system is about, and that's what BitRamp is about. Is just making removing those fences for people to have access.
let's talk about your Bitcoin journey then. Let's how did you come across it and when did it really click for you?
Yeah, I think I was fortunate enough to have somebody in my ear early, but relative. I mean, to me, it was not not that early, but I still wasn't listening. I was kind of like, I don't know. I didn't really, even if I wanted to, I couldn't really participate. I was just trying to, pay bills, scrape by, and it was before it was really in the news all the time. But he's, the guy, great, like all time, great friend. And he's the smartest guy I know, so, and he's, would keep on about it. He's talking to anybody that would listen, and I tend to listen well. So I was, over time, once I finally started to, I could participate, at least, something like, okay, I buy like a really small amount, you know, and forgot about it. And, I wasn't really, and then, uh, a big drop came, and I was like, well, he told me that was going to happen. So whatever, it's not going to break my back. And then it was through a couple of those, rise and falls. I'm like, oh, okay, and the number is going up, and so that's definitely how I was first brought into it, was like a savings account. And it wasn't until I really hunkered down, read the standard. I was starting to write a check to the IRS that I wasn't comfortable with, and I started to put it together and really understand what had been going on with money, um, for since the beginning of time, and really what specifically was going on here in the states. And for me, it just all started to click to where I just, I was fully down the rabbit hole. I viewed everything in my life differently. I totally understand, low time preference, high time preference is something that's going through my mind every day. Like, really, what is this worth to me now? Do I need this now, or would it be better if I don't? And what am I working towards? Which has always resonated with goals and things like that. So I think it I was certainly primed for a while, but then, yeah, finally, once it hit, it really took over, and changed my education and my desire to learn, not just Bitcoin, but everything that it touches. And then, yeah, just changed the way with which I viewed the world.
Yeah, is there anything that touches? Is there any other discipline out there? I guess it's not really an academic discipline, but maybe in a way it is. Bitcoin is. But like, is there any other system of technology that touches as many aspects of the human experience as Bitcoin?
No,
I'm not sure.
no, I don't. Yeah, it's tough to say. And I see some of the arguments on Twitter. They're like, did Satoshi know that it would impact this or that? And some people are like, yeah, he knew it all. And it's funny to think about. It's a great thought exercise. And I always just go back to,
Right.
hey, Big, Bitcoin, really, it is what it is. It's a database. Um, and at the end of the day, humans are going to do with it what they want. But at the end of the day, every human will have a purpose for using that database. And it's been interesting to see. Yeah, it's just like you said. It's never the world has never seen anything quite like it.
Yeah. Being being in business with Azteco, you mentioned earlier, I first saw Bitcoin as a savings account, and a lot of people that might be their first NGU number go up, fiat price. What is one Bitcoin worth in fiat price? And one of the things that has captured my attention from the leadership, all the way from CEO, beauty on down, is the constant conversation around Bitcoin is not money, it is a database, is a lot of what they're talking about. And that's different than calling it an asset that where number goes up. So, what are your thoughts there, and how, if any, in any way, has your perception of Bitcoin changed along those lines?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, just like anything, as humans, we see something new and we want to categorize it. We want to put it in a box, like, oh, this is what it is. This is what it has to be. This is how we're going to treat it. This is what we're going to do with it. And so when there's something truly revolutionary, it takes time, other than, and, Budion's great because he's been in it, since the start of it. And you can read his, writings from early on, but um, it,
Right.
it's not one thing, and I think that's one thing that I've been blessed to be able to read a lot of what his thoughts on it, because it's not just that one thing. It's not just a savings account, store of value. It's an open monetary network. It's a settlement. There's a settlement layer there. There's there's layers of the onion that we're just really starting to peel back. And so, yeah, for my own journey, I think that pivot from number go up savings account to, you know this needs to be in the hands of every human on the earth, and the only way that's going to happen is if we're interacting with it. And that's where I started to understand, I feel like Azteco a little bit better. Is this the, their thing is the consumerization of Bitcoin. And it's absolutely necessary for small businesses, for people, for everyone to utilize this technology, definitely in a way that serves them. But at the end of the day,
Yes.
the way it's going to be most accessible is in that consumer style, exchange. And so that's where I love the Azteco model so much, is like having access to this on every corner, so that businesses can then accept. There's so many benefits to a small business accepting Bitcoin as payment. But my whole thing, and really, one thing that I talk about a lot is, what does it matter if a business is accepting Bitcoin if nobody has any? And I love this movement that, of Bitcoiners to get businesses to accept. But I think what's tremendously overlooked is that, what how many people in the US are walking around with a Lightning wallet ready to spend, you
Yep.
know? It's like, great, you got this
Exactly.
business all hyped up on Bitcoin, they're excited to accept it. They're like, open the gates. It's like, wait, nobody has it. So even if you incentivize people, it's like, okay, send them. All right, so here's the best way to get Bitcoin. Here's the referral code. You just go sign up, come back in a week, and you can take advantage of this deal that we're doing. It's like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. We can, um, the velocity and the interaction with Bitcoin can be much freer, much easier, to where, that affects everything. That affects, the more users, the number go up, and all that. That's all great. But at the end of the day, yeah, I think my journey has been largely, yeah, just from number go up is kind of, it's always in the background, it's always there, it's going to happen. Bitcoin's worth way more than what that price says right now. But ultimately people need to have it in their hands for it to mean anything.
Yeah. And even I need to confess that I used the language of the captors a little bit earlier by talking about KYC and that sort of thing. Because you and I had a conversation about that when I was getting onboarded around using free person's language when it comes to Bitcoin, like ethical Bitcoin, for instance. So the rest of this conversation, we're going to talk about ethical Bitcoin. When you think ethical Bitcoin, um, from your own thoughts and even from what you can read around, what Azteco has put out there about what ethical Bitcoin is, could you maybe explain that difference between ethical Bitcoin and the alternatives?
Yeah, I think I think the ethically, what is, if you have this technology that, is changing the world, that is going to transcend the human experience. It's going to transcend how civilizations function. Transcend how the world, how, yeah, countries interact. It's doing all these things, and just like we spoke about earlier, I mean, what's the from an ethics standpoint, is it ethical to say who can have access to it and who can't? You know, and especially when you didn't create it. Someone can maybe make the argument, well, the creator gets to decide. It's like, well, the people that are making these decisions around putting walls up or around it, they they don't even understand it. They don't even know what it is, but they're trying to leverage it, in a way that benefits them, just like people do. So I think ultimately, ethical means open to everyone. And when that contrasted with the state of the world and what we're used to as far as the KYC process, that is not open to everyone. We're being protected by offering up every detail about our life. No, that's unnecessary. And so yeah, I think that's how I view kind of the two sides of that.
Yeah, and the whole reason that was a roundabout way of getting back to your point that you were making around people having Bitcoin is how are they going to get it and how are they going to get it easily, right? And so you just spoke a lot to that of this ethical Bitcoin that's open to people so that they can go spend it on the things they need to spend it on without having to ask permission for, can I have this much on my Lightning wallet? Oh wait, can I actually have this much? Because I don't want to buy a coffee. I want to buy my like weekly groceries. Oh,
Right.
just kidding. I want to buy a sofa for my house.
Yeah.
Oh, just kidding. I want to buy a house.
Yeah.
It's like, and obviously, like restaurants and smaller purchases are probably going to be the first step in this new, truly circular economy. But maybe that's another direction for this conversation to go. Is that what a circular economy looks like? Is vendors offering Bitcoin so that they can accept it, so they can easily offer it to people who can easily get it and then easily spend it. Is it that simple? I don't know.
I mean,
What are your
I
thoughts?
think so. I think we tend to people tend to make things more complicated than they are. But it's like, hey, you got to use it. If you want to use it, you have to be able to get it. If small businesses want to accept it, they have to reasonably, provide an easy way for their customers to get it. If people want to start paying for houses in Bitcoin or accept payment in Bitcoin, they it needs to be reasonable for everyone to be able to access that. And granted, the people maybe who are buying houses and exchanging on that level, they're not probably not concerned, but it is, at some point that'll shift. And I think, to allow access to everyone is ultimately the shift that we're going to see, to where, um, I think people start to truly understand the benefits. The masses don't fully understand. A lot of people, you know, don't even fully know what the Lightning Network is and how that transacts and how easy it is and the benefits to small businesses. So it's in doing that people will see.
Yeah. My last session was with a guy named Texas Slim. You may be familiar with him. He's trying to get ranchers to accept Bitcoin.
Yeah,
And so every rancher with a BitRamp terminal or Azteco terminal, so that when someone comes to the farm, uh, they can pay the rancher in Bitcoin who doesn't now have to accept the government subsidies to keep the farm alive because he has an entry in the database that for some reason in terms of fiat dollars keeps being more and more valuable.
right. Somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I
That
love
that is
that.
the miss.
I love that, and
Yeah.
I think it's something that people, the more people see these outside of the box uses, whether it be for any way to transact, the more it's going to be normalized, and the more people see the benefits. I mean, once you start hitting every different group and population for them to see a use case, whatever it is for them, And that's why I think it's so important when people talk about it. I think it's easy for Bitcoiners to go at it their one angle. When all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. So they're going after people with their Michael Saylor pitch of like, this is how it's good for you. But it may not be. Some people may not care about that pitch. And so I think it's important for even people who've been in this space for a long time to interact, to try the different tools that are coming online, the different businesses that are being created, because it's not until reading about it won't do it. It's going to be in doing and seeing, and then you can speak more educated on just specifically how this is going to change the world. And to think about ranchers, exchanging in Bitcoin is it's such a beautiful thing that I don't know that anyone would have put on their things that were going to happen in 2022. Um, but that's all it takes is the right people having the conversations, and the light bulbs start going off pretty fast.
Yeah, definitely. Um, it's pretty beautiful, right? Because like um, another person I was talking with was Roy from Breeze, and he talked about how money has always been issued by someone or a small group of people, and it's always been used or can be and has always been exploited. This use case has always been exploited that you force your morality on someone else. So they have to adhere to your code of morality in order to use that money. Um, and Bitcoin being a way to uh, where there's no rulers, there's rules without rulers. So when it comes down to it, it's open to everyone. You can interact with it and you can do what you want with it. Now, there's typically in most societies been a common standard of morality, right? In some way, you might disagree on nuances, but
Right.
in general, everyone kind of realizes that probably you shouldn't do, or that would not be good. But um, yeah, who gets to decide what that is the question. I think that goes back to something you said earlier.
Totally.
Who gets to decide who gets to use it and what for?
Yeah, and that's let the people decide. I think that's something that as a country, globally, we've lost our way as far as who controls the money and how and what the implications of that are. And I think what we've seen over the last 50 years, especially, has been a grip, a tightening on that control, and with that has come the edicts and the things that have now dictated our culture and things that you're seeing in the news, in our schools, and down to our families, and so I think as people understand the value of being able to, interact in a money that is, or in a database, and to interact in a way that is free of perversion and free of coercion, is going to change the way that people interact. There's you're going to see a significant reduction of grifts and people running scams on large scales, and it's just going to it's not going to be necessarily a utopia. Evil exists, but you're removing a lot of the incentive to behave against your against your neighbor, when you're taking the power of the money away from a centralized source of any sort. So yeah, it's exciting to think about what that timeline is. Man, who knows? It seems who knows, but it seems like a foregone conclusion, given the implications.
Yeah, who knows what the timeline is, but you're investing your professional time in in making and trying to shorten that timeline, right? By going into this line of business.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what, and at some point, um, you know, you're excited enough, or you understand Bitcoin enough, or just any movement. Let's say you want to contribute your time and your energy to it, and I guess it's that low time preference, thought of, hey, I don't know when this is gonna take place, but if I can find a way to contribute and start creating a better life down the road for my kids, for my family, for my friends and their family, if there's a way that I can contribute to bettering the future, you know, let's go. And I believe, wholeheartedly that creating more access points for people to interact with Bitcoin is, um, I mean, I think it's the best way to spend your time. But I'm definitely biased.
Yeah, I like that language too. Allowing people to interact with Bitcoin and the Bitcoin network. That's it's as simple as that. There's a lot of people who care and have spent their professional lives and reputations on Twitter and the podcasting circuit around ethical Bitcoin. I'm not going to use the language of captors. I'm going to use free people's
Yeah,
language. Ethical
love it.
Bitcoin, privacy in the digital age, and that sort of thing. But really, when it comes down to it, there are very few companies that have allowed people when they are on board with that mission. Yeah, yeah, I want to do that. That the company has scaled out to make it possible to do that.
Mhm.
And so it's cool to see you partnering with an onboarding almost to the Azteco vision of, yeah, all that thing we're here, we're doing it.
Yeah,
Here it is, and making it easy.
for sure. No,
So I
it's
think the ease
it's
of interacting with Bitcoin is.
yeah, it's been a
Go
blast
ahead. Y-
to do so, because you see somebody redeem a voucher for the first time. It's like it really is magic. They're obviously they understand the concept of a QR code, but to redeem um, a Bitcoin voucher, just like redeeming a gift card. But to see that go into the wallet that you just downloaded right there, and you now have started a sovereign stack, and you're there for a meetup to be able to educate on that. No longer do they need to say, yeah, this is a Bitcoin centric exchange. Go sign up there, and here's a referral code. They can say, hey, we can help you out right now. Here, download this. Here's a QR, and boom, you are now holding um, Bitcoin, and it's like it. That's where I think people see a difference. That's where people see a change. So wow, this is different than anything else I've ever experienced. As opposed to, this is exactly like everything else. Am I trading a stock right now? Like what am I doing? Bitcoin is. Am I buying shares? Is that what? Versus
Mhm.
you hold it personally. I think um, the thought of the next billion people being onboarded that way versus the the previous 5-6 years is just I think a beautiful thing, and I think it's going to be more powerful as people continue on their own journey.
And that's going to help people look at a lot of wallets have switched to removing the fiat value completely, right? Like it's you just see the sat. Not all of them have because people are still they're still thinking in what they typically transact in and making sure, okay, I know what the value is in that. But like Samurai, for instance, there's no mention of fiat value. And actually, because uh, BitRamp is on an Android and normally use an iPhone, I actually do get to use Samurai Wallet now.
Nice.
But that's what's great about it is these wallets are starting to turn people to think in the sat value itself. Like, oh, I have 100,000 sats. What can I buy with 100,000 sats?
Right.
And that's even a change because it becomes a unit of account.
Yeah, for sure. And
So,
I think that's important for people to, it's definitely important because the days of um, owning a whole, I think a lot of people are turned off by the idea of like, well, I can't buy any Bitcoin. I don't have 25 grand, And I think to be able to illustrate it in those increments is, obviously Bitcoin doesn't have a marketing team. Otherwise that probably would have been hit on, a long time ago. But for it to have wallets like that are showing it that way, I think is really helpful.
yeah. Yeah. Doug, in your vision for the future, because you've clearly thought at least somewhat further than a lot of people think in this day and age, uh, hey, what kind of life can I leave for my kids, right? Is something I heard you say. In your vision for the future, where, because last I checked, like publicly, we know of about 180 million maybe users across the world, and there are 8 billion people. Obviously, there are probably more who are private that could be added to that. But when we do get to a billion people using Bitcoin, have you thought about what things look like from a monetary perspective, from a daily, like transactional perspective, at all? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about it, and there's been a couple podcasts I've listened to that are very futuristic, um, in that, like, even I think there's one, I think it was Beyond actually did, where it's going through the day in the life of a functioning on Bitcoin, and like all the different implications. I'll try to find that and send it to you, but yeah, I think right now to us and to me it would seem very futuristic, um, but it I haven't. I feel like I haven't spent much time beyond listening to a couple things to really imagine. I don't daydream on it too much, um, because
You got a lot going on.
there's so much to be done right now. I'd love to spend some time thinking about that, but I think it's just a life where people, at the end of the day, will ultimately understand, I think, what they're doing with their monetary value much better. And maybe not, it may not be a culturally explicit thing, but I think once you remove that function of a in inflationary fiat, I think people naturally over time, that high time preference culture that we live in, and I tend to think about things more on the higher level, as far as the day to day. But I think, I hope, and I do believe that over time it'll just be a more low time preference society, which pretty basic answer. I think anyone could probably guess that, but I think if that takes place, I mean, you'll see a better world for sure.
Yeah, when you think about like a savings culture versus a um, spend now, spend all you have,
Yeah,
spend
money's
before
cheap,
you have.
right? Yeah,
Money. Yep. Yeah, cheap money can create some hard times, which I think we're just now entering that winter in a way that's tangible. It probably was here before, but it's really become tangible, I think, for a lot of people across the world, even now in the States where we have kind of the still somewhat the reserve currency status, the US dollar, it's starting to get hard for a lot of people. So,
yeah, and I think
and
it's just like you said. I think it's kind of the tip of the iceberg. So it's all ultimately growing pains. I think that the dying it's the transition. Um, so I hope it doesn't last too long. But again,
Yeah.
all we can do is just continue to stay focused on the things that we believe are going to bring people out of it, in better shape.
Yeah. Yeah. Like your friend did with you, just consistent training, building trust, preparing people. Like, I've had a couple friends who know about my interest in Bitcoin who don't want to touch it because it's like too hard. I don't understand it and that sort of thing. And part of that was the first few years of my Bitcoin existence. It was trying to give the sailor pitch rather than just make them aware of how easy it is. But now I've moved more in that direction. But still, oh man, that free Bitcoin I got from the Super Bowl commercial from Coinbase is now worth like a third of what it was at that time.
Yeah,
And I say, well, hey, if you don't want it, here's a QR code you can send it to, and I'll gladly take it off your
yeah,
hands. But warning them ahead of time that but the reason I'm taking it is because, I'm trying to stack as many sats as I can while they're cheap. But it's that idea of how do we make it as easy as possible now, educating them, but letting them, like you said, see it, experience it, um, and see how it is actually a different category than what they're used to
hmm
in this in I'm still of the age, and my friend circle is still of the age where like you could put money in your savings account at the local bank and see 4 to 5, 6% interest like when I was really young. And now it's like 0.75%.
yeah.
The
It's nothing.
CPI is like almost 10. It's like I put money in with this bank and I'm losing like most of the value in, what is that, 2 years? Three, it'd be like more like 4 years, but still, like that's not where I need to put my money in. So people are putting money in their houses and this and that. So it'll be interesting to see over the next couple years, where people are if they happen to have that free Coinbase Bitcoin from the Super Bowl commercial in 2022,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
and they just hold
And
on to it.
I think to your point about making it easy, I mean, the vast majority of people don't care about mining, hash rate. They don't care about the block height. They don't care. I mean, it's all really cool stuff to track, and obviously there's
Public and
industries
private
being
nodes.
being created that are gonna transcend the way energy is done. But the vast majority of people do not care. They just want to see how can I use this? Why would I use this, or why should I care if a business accepts it? And how does it even help them? I think and people may not even care about that, but even just showing them, hey, Bitcoin is easy, and this is how easy it is, and I I believe that it's that visual that is going to help people understand, hey, do what you want with that. If you want to sit on it and start collecting some, great. If you want to support your local, you know, business because it saves them on transaction fees, awesome. You should. And there a laundry list, but it's just that entry point, making it so simple your grandma can do it. And that's definitely
Yes,
what BitRamp is trying um, to create, just more access points so that more grandmas can buy Bitcoin.
that's right. That's right. Because they're on, most of them are probably on fixed income, right? And so
Yeah,
they need to be
yeah,
able to make sure that value holds through. So,
for sure. Yeah,
well, that's cool. Well, Doug, it's been fantastic having you on, sharing your business, your vision. If First of all, how can people find you? And second of all, if they're a business looking to become a BitRamp vendor, how easy is it to get started? What does that process look like?
yeah. You can go to the website bitramp.co, or also on Twitter, bit_ramp. Yeah, it's very, very easy to get started. Essentially, just ask for a few details, get your account set up, and get it funded, and then maybe take 3 to 5 business days to get your terminal, and you're running. So it's very easy. It's not a complicated device to operate. It's very, as you can probably attest to, very simple and straightforward. Training really isn't required, but certainly BitRamp's here to support, and we're really growing a community of vendors who are fired up. They're looking for different ways to orange pill their community, and different ways to use Bitcoin vouchers. So that's been fun to see, just all the different use cases that are popping up.
Yeah. And actually, to that point, this is a really key distinction in my mind that someone who's listening, who's like, oh, I'm interested, might want to know is the difference between selling a Bitcoin voucher and selling Bitcoin. Could you maybe just quickly elaborate on that?
For sure, yeah. As selling a voucher, you're not touching Bitcoin at all. So we're not. You're essentially selling a gift card. It's a voucher code essentially. So really, any operations of Bitcoin are handled on the back end with the redemption process. So it's not a it's very simple and straightforward.
Yeah, that was a key distinction for people because I've had a couple reach out to me and ask. So I had to kind of quickly, that was kind of the first thing I mentioned. Um,
Yeah.
well, that's cool. And Doug, I'm looking forward to being in that group that you mentioned of fired up BitRamp vendors, and excited to see what
Yeah.
we can do and to see your business grow. And really appreciate your time today.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, John. I appreciate the opportunity.
What an incredible service Doug is providing in partnership with Azteco. If you are a business, contact Doug right now and get onboarded to BitRamp. It really is so simple. And if you want people to spend Bitcoin at your business, get a BitRamp terminal, sell a Bitcoin voucher, allow that person to redeem it to a super simple mobile device like Pine Wallet, Breeze, Moon, uh, Edge, Phoenix, all of these different types of wallets, Blue Wallet, that don't ask for information. They just let you get your Bitcoin, keep it securely on your device, and send and receive with whomever you want, wherever you want, whenever you want. And so, if you're a business, talk to Doug. Talk about how it can transform your ability to receive Bitcoin. And not only that, get Bitcoin into the hands of your community so that they can not only spend it at your business, but elsewhere as well. Or even more than that, allow them to get those entries in the Bitcoin database. And that way they're able to preserve value over time compared to the current fiat inflationary regime. I'm very excited about this mission, and that's why I wanted to have Doug on today. And so, very excited for what he's doing. Now, some cool things that came out recently in Bitcoin. I saw a post from Moneyball, Steve Lee on Twitter, that LND and LND, I believe, Carla at LND at Lightning Labs is working on Bolt 12 for LND. So I saw that tweet, but that would be an incredible thing, allowing Bolt 12 to go in even at the spec level of the Lightning Network. And why is that important? Well, recurring payments without having to continually create a new invoice each time just smooths the experience for the everyday person. And it's in a way, it's what they're used to from the legacy system, but we're transposing that onto the Lightning Network, which is going to make it even better because the base layer is Bitcoin, and it's still a peer-to-peer transaction on a recurring basis. So that's really cool. Another thing, Mempool just came out with a beta Lightning Network Explorer, and it looks beautiful, just like anything BitRamp does. Sorry, BitRamp too. They make things simple and elegant, but mempool.space, making it as beautiful as their um, block explorer. And so check it out. When you go to mempool.space, you can see their lightning icon in the top that says beta. So saw that on Stacker News yesterday, and what a beautiful thing that is. And so there's a good chance I will start just going through lightning stats and Bitcoin stats just straight from my mempool on my node. So yeah, all that being said, again, if you like the show, please like, subscribe on all the different podcast players. Most importantly, the ones that are lightning enabled: Breeze, Fountain, Castamatic, and I believe also Podverse. Those are some of my tip-top, most enjoyable podcast apps. Podverse is open source, and Breeze is an ethical Bitcoin signer and signing device. So a mobile signing device where you can not only listen to podcast episodes, but you can also have it as a point of sale and send and receive lightning payments. Okay, on top of that, Fountain has a great clipping infrastructure, and they also pay you Bitcoin to listen. So that's really cool. And Castamatic is still, I believe, the standard bearer in terms of user interface and experience on podcasting 2.0. It's a beautiful app, and you should check that one out as well. So all of those links will be in the show notes, but please like, subscribe, and send sats as well. I'm starting to get a high volume of small sat payments, 100, 200, 250, sent to episodes of Changing the Tide. And that's a really cool thing, a higher volume, and you get to see when those were sent and even get messages with them. And remember, if you would like to ask any guest a question, you can do that by sending sats, by sending a boostergram, and send the question encased in that boostergram, and I will make sure to get the answers for you. All right, thanks again for listening, and keep stacking those sats, and do it ethically. Get a BitRamp terminal. See you next time.